Hello, and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on episode 25 of Code Geass R2. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. So last we left off, Lelouch is essentially victorious. You know, he's Geass Schneizel, he's confronted Nunnally, and while all seems well, Nunnally has revealed that, okay, yeah, she's not so blind anymore. And the trouble with this is now pushing up Lelouch against, like, the last and final red line. Can he bring himself to Geass Nunnally if it would bring about the changes he wants to see? And frankly, I don't know what the answer is, because I think there's a good case for both of them. You know, on the one hand, he might truly not be able to bring himself to do it. On the other hand, he seems to be committed to playing the villain here, so maybe he will do it, you know, just to fool everyone for the best, you know? Because, like, I get the feeling that he's playing things so that he appears to be a worse tyrant than even his father was. Someone so horrible that, like, everyone is then sort of forced to do what's morally right. But I don't know if he can actually bring himself to just Geass Nunnally. I mean, she's sort of daring him to, but I don't know if that's sufficient. Now, I feel like as hard as this moral conflict is for Lelouch, things are made a little bit worse given that there's a battle going on. So, unfortunately, I feel like he's gonna have to make a choice sooner rather than later. So, I do find it interesting that Kellen and Suzaku are fighting one another. It makes sense that they would come to blows eventually, but that this is the climactic fight, I guess. So, Kellen is pretty self-assured in that she can win and stop Lelouch, but, I mean, at this point in time, I don't know if that's really the case. Now, things seem kind of dour back at Ashford Academy, because, you know, you have what remains of the student council, and, you know, they're talking like they should have evacuated. And it seems to me that they're probably a little bit closer to the war zone than perhaps they would like. Ooh. Those are fighting words from Anya. I don't think Jeremiah should just sit and take that. I think he should do something serious. And I guess, speaking of serious, it seems like things are serious on all fronts here. You know, Toto was wounded in the last episode, but he seems to be willing to get back in the fight, probably against his better judgment. Ooh. So it seems like things are devolving between Lelouch and Nunnally, you know, arguing about the situation in a way that I imagine only siblings really can, considering the circumstances they were under. And Lelouch does bring up a good point, like, what would you have me do? Continue living as we had, fearing assassination? And, that's no real way to live. I feel like Nunnally is right but naive, like, the things Lelouch has done, many of them are unsavory. Many of them have crossed a line that I personally would consider as being irredeemable. But at the same time, I could certainly imagine doing some unsavory things for the benefit of my family if that's what it came down to. So, despite what Nunnally's saying, she is kinda right, but it's not the full picture either. Man, it seems like everyone's just sort of struggling privately. Toto, now Jinki and Tianzi. I mean, I figured Jinki was not long for this world, and based on the state of repair of his nightmare frame, that's possibly true. Alright, so things are getting rather brutal in the fight, Kallen and Suzaku tearing each other's nightmare frames apart like that. Alright, so I do find it interesting that everyone's sort of all having these second thoughts privately. I guess this is probably always the way of things, Only the most self-righteous people can sort of cling to their ideals when the going gets as tough as this. This being a war of fairly momentous proportions. Yeah, I mean, for a lot of the original Black Knights, they're certainly idealistic, but I feel like without Zero around leading them, not many of them would have had the stomach to do a lot of the things that had been done. And I guess to be fair to them, they were only following orders, but in a way, it was Lelouch's leadership that made things happen, Ooh. So this is interesting. Nunnally's trying to throw the lack of free will due to the Geass and Lelouch's fate, and he says, well, what about the Damocles? And Nunnally says, oh, no, this is like a nexus for hatred. If people hate the Damocles, then... Oh my god, he's actually doing it. Okay, well this confirms in my mind that Lelouch is attempting to become hated so that other people can benefit in the end when he's overthrown, presumably. Ah, man. This is rough to watch, for Nunnally to have been forced to hand over the key to the Damocles, but... Ah, man. So I guess the question is, to what end does Lelouch want the Damocles? Surely he's not going to start bombarding places wildly, right? Oh boy, so things are just continuing to heat up. Good on Jeremiah for surviving, I like the guy. Man, there's something about just like standing unarmored atop an enemy nightmare frame, pointing a sword at the pilot. Alright, so it seems like everyone's sort of fighting to a stalemate here. Anya and Jeremiah, Suzaku and Kallen now. And Gino, he's sort of out of the fight, but the idea that he's still trying to get his nightmare frame to move, I feel like he might be a deciding factor somehow. Not in any real way, but just enough to tip the scales. I do find it interesting that all these high-spec nightmare frames, they've depleted all their special weapons, and now it's just basically down to hand-to-hand combat. I think there is something kind of poetic about that, in the sense that, despite all these modern tools of war and all that, things kind of don't change. And everything sort of boils down to the same thing in the end. Okay, I guess Gino did come in clutch in the end, saving Kellen. So, it seems like Suzaku might not be around anymore, but I'm not willing to believe that either. You know, for the same reason I'm unwilling to believe Nunnally had died. Wow. So even as he guesses her to give him the key, Lelouch is saying, like, look, you lived your life under your own free will, doing as you thought, and like, look, I'm going to ensure that you can continue to live that way. And it is interesting that she seems unaware of that, having now snapped out of the Geass. Which, I guess is nice and convenient if Lelouch wants to continue this facade of being irredeemably evil. Oh, I thought for a second she was going to reveal that she can walk too, but I suppose not. Surely he's going to help her up, right? Ooh, that's, man, I feel like, if nothing else, Lelouch should have had the courtesy to, you know, help Nunnally back into her wheelchair, but like, wow. So interestingly here, C2 is surrendering. You know, she was defeated, but now she's turning herself over to the Black Knights. It seems like it doesn't really matter, it's kind of too late. You know, Lelouch is ascendant, he has the key to the Damocles, he is effectively Emperor of the world now, and there's nothing anyone can really do about it. I mean, he's now using the weapon. I didn't think he would do that, but, I mean, from this point, like, his position is unassailable, right? You know, he's got this gigantic fortress that can launch nukes anywhere. Schneisel's on his side now, however unwillingly, and, like, essentially all of the opposition has been crushed. Or if not crushed, then fought to a stalemate. I do find it interesting that he's just sort of declaring world domination now. It's like, yeah, the world belongs to me now, and as your sovereign, I command you to obey me. And, you know, there's not much anyone can really do about it at this juncture. So the question is, with half an episode remaining, how does the Zero Requiem play out here? Because it seems to me the idea here is that Lelouch ultimately wants to go down as a villain and a tyrant to such a degree that people would never allow something like this to happen again. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what he's playing at here, but, like, he's got this big military parade, he's got all his enemies chained up and prepared for execution. Oh. Okay, so Suzaku is dead then. Oh. To have Nunnally chained up on this moving float, that's... You know, like, I really don't want to despise Lelouch, but, like, this is bad. And I guess things are only getting worse if, like, people in the crowd are murmuring that, like, if we're caught dissenting, it's our entire family that will pay for it. So he's really just, like, speedrunning totalitarian government real quick. Man. So it seems like even among the prisoners, many of whom include former members of the Black Knights, and, you know, I guess, you know, quote-unquote loyalists to Lelouch, like, morale is not gone, interestingly enough, despite all being imprisoned. I'm not sure exactly what hope they have to cling on to, perhaps they're hoping, Cornelia is going to do something. This certainly seems like that's going to be the case. It's interesting that Cornelia, who was essentially a villain early on, or portrayed that way, is now perhaps the most morally upstanding person. Oh. Okay, so maybe this is the Zero Requiem then. Someone's masquerading as Zero. It's not Lelouch, and, well, it's not C2 either. Unless that's a flashback. Oh, it's gotta be Suzaku, right? Surely, because, he can't just die. He was told to live, after all. Commanded, in fact. Ooh. Okay, so this is definitely planned then if Jeremiah is putting up a show and still losing. Alright, so this is very interesting that Lelouch would have himself killed by Zero publicly. And I guess this is the confirmation, it is Suzaku, he is still alive. And he's doing it because right now everyone and everything everywhere hates him. And I guess the hope is that if the thing that everyone hates simultaneously is snuffed out, then, that's it, no more hatred. It's a nice thought. I don't know if it'll work, I feel like people in general, just like how people always find something to complain about, they'll always find something to hate. And while Lelouch's goal is self-sacrificial and laudable, I don't know if it's going to work in the end, unless he also sort of weaves some kind of Geass into it. Ooh. Asking Suzaku, don't wishes resemble Geass? Asking someone for something you can't achieve by yourself. I'm wondering if, I am correct here, if he is sort of using a Geass to enforce his will one last time. Now, it is interesting that everyone's seemingly been caught flat-footed here. Cornelia, the people up for execution, man. Oh, that's interesting that Lelouch's words would come back here, that those who shoot must also be prepared to die. Well, if nothing else, Lelouch is sort of dying with the smile on his face, his plan having succeeded. I just have to say, I do feel bad for Nunnally because she's witnessing this. She's not blind anymore, and despite all the evil things, the patently evil things Lelouch has done, to witness something like this is, not good, Ooh, what's this here? Lelouch is saying that Suzaku will have to, forego happiness and cease to be himself for the rest of his life. We don't see anything going on in the eyes, so I don't think it's a Geass per se, but, I guess it sort of factors into that conversation about wishes being Geasses in a weird sort of way. Man, Nunnally can't catch a break. She's gonna have to witness Lelouch's death too, right in front of her, right up close. Ah. So, what's this? Is this a spark of understanding that's passed to her, that she knows what happened, or... Maybe this is just her inferring. I guess it would make sense in a way that... Or, well... I don't know, maybe it's her just sort of coping with, just all the horrible stuff that's going on. I mean, I could imagine being in a situation like this and wanting to believe what I want to believe rather than what is true. Alright. So, everything seems all, cheery and rosy, sort of. Lelouch the villain is dead, Zero has slain him. That's all well and good, but, Nunnally's suffering. Like, she has no real family left anymore. And, she's been put through the ringer so much, like... Oh, boy. I really do hope that things work out for Nunnally despite the abject misery of everything. So I guess that's about it then, I suppose we'll be treated to a little montage, showing how everything's turned out alright. I guess it isn't exactly the closure I would want, but... oh well. Callan seems to be alright, if, still a bit melancholy about everything that's happened. It is nice that she remembers Lelouch and that, she acknowledges that despite everything, the world has improved somewhat. That is something, I guess, that Lelouch has become a scapegoat, and that, all the bad things have been foisted onto him. Well, I guess that does kind of prove the efficacy of his plan, that, it's easier to pin all the bad things on a face rather than just the Damocles. It is interesting that Callan is sort of thinking that, this is sort of according to his plan, wasn't it? He would be just the type. Oh... Jeremiah's working on an orange orchard. That's a wee bit on the nose, don't you think? At least in that one brief glimpse, he seemed content in his work. That couldn't have been said of him much earlier in the series. Alright, so I'm just trying to think here of all the loose ends, and I feel like most of them have been tied up, but I guess the big thing is that C2 yet remains alive. She didn't get to die, and that's gotta be kind of an issue for her. Oh, surely. Surely she was speaking hypothetically, right? She wasn't talking to the driver of the wagon. Alright, if Lelouch isn't stone dead, then I'm gonna have a little bit of an issue. Because on the one hand, I feel like it would make sense for him to cheat death. But I feel like this is a Cowboy Bebop kind of thing where it's like, look, Spike is just dead. Lelouch is dead. He's done too many things that are abjectly horrible, and I feel like even if it hasn't necessarily been displayed, there's gotta be some part of him that is not willing to live with the things that he's done, especially in regards to Nunnally. I don't know, maybe I'm getting worked up over nothing. Surely Lelouch could not have lived, there's no way. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.